Architecture is the truest record of life, as it was lived yesterday, as it is being lived today, or ever will be lived. Hi everyone, Ken here. Welcome to This House. These words were spoken by Frank Lloyd Wright, who derived beauty from tragedy in the formation of his personal house, Taliesin. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an exciting episode of This House. The story of Taliesin begins in 1903. Frank Lloyd Wright was an established architect, working from his home in Oak Park, Illinois. Edwin CHENEY and his wife Mary were avid fans of his signature prairie style and commissioned Frank to design their dream home. Upon meeting, Frank and Mary were immediately taken with each other and began having an affair. By 1909, they had both separated from their spouses, and in the following year, they traveled off to Europe where they could be with each other openly. As time went on, they dreamed of building a house together, settling down, and starting a family. But two married people having an affair could not expect so much without their reputations being destroyed. That's when they began devising a plan to evade scandal. Back in the United States, Frank's mother Anna was living on their family's ancestral land near Spring Green, Wisconsin. The property was expansive and remote, with rolling hills and deep ravines, far away from anyone who might pass judgment on Frank and Mary. In 1910, Frank met with his mother and convinced her to allow them to move to the property. He took out a small loan to build his mother a house, but in reality, the house would be built for his lover. He moved Mary to the property to live with his sister in a house known as Tanny Dairy, which he had designed several years earlier. Everything seemed to be going according to plan, but later that year, a reporter broke the news in the Chicago Examiner that Wright had been living a double life. With the break of the scandal, Frank's career came crashing to a halt. Very few clients, most of whom were very reputable, wanted to associate with him. This gave him the chance to focus on his new life with Mary and thoroughly plan his dream home. He scouted for the perfect location to begin construction and chose to build on one of his favorite locations from childhood, near the top of a hill. He designed a house that would become part of the hill, blending nature and the built environment together, naming it Taliesin, meaning shining brow, a nod to his Welsh ancestry. Frank Lloyd Wright described the home as low, wide, and snug, as the single-story residence protruded from the hill in three main sections, a residential wing and an agricultural wing joined by an office wing, all seamlessly connecting to a courtyard. He chose yellow limestone to imitate the natural rock formations found in the landscape, and mixed plaster with sienna for the walls to resemble the sand found on nearby riverbanks. Every detail was planned thoroughly to blend the house with its natural environment, even planning for materials such as the roof shingles to weather and age with grace so that they might become indistinguishable from the gray branches which swayed overhead. Though not everything would remain natural, he brought in hundreds of fruiting trees and vegetables to be planted around the house, creating a working farm to sustain the family with food. Finally, with the contours of the house planned in idealistic fashion, he designed the courtyard to imperfectly balance the organic aesthetic. Using the concept of wabi-sabi, a Japanese practice in landscape architecture, he laid out the courtyard with a T-circle, boasting a natural pool in the center, with oak trees planted to both disrupt the seating area and accent it. While the architecture presented a strict adherence to geometric principles, nature was allowed to flaunt its beauty through seemingly random, imperfect means. But this is not the house we are looking at. Not quite, because in 1914, tragedy struck. As Frank was out of town working, a member of his domestic staff, JULIAN CARLTON, was given a notice of his last day of work. CARLTON, originally from Barbados, had been continually harassed by one of Wright's draftsmen, Emile Brodel, who frequently insulted CARLTON with racial slurs. Upon receiving his notice of termination, CARLTON began plotting his revenge against Emile and the rest of the family for his poor treatment. On August 12th, just as lunch was to be served, he picked up a hatchet and approached Mary and her son from behind, slaying them as they sat. Her daughter jolted across the house and fled into the courtyard, where CARLTON caught up with her and took her life. He poured gasoline over their bodies, as well as the entrances and exits from the house, and lit it all on fire. As people began exiting the house in terror, He chopped them down one by one with his hatchet, killing 6 people. He then attempted to take his own life by drinking a vial of hydrochloric acid, but it proved not to be a fatal amount. Though CARLTON was captured by police and charged with murder, he entered a plea of not guilty. Even though the acid did not kill him immediately, it had greatly injured his esophagus and stomach lining, to the point that he was not able to consume food. After 47 days, he passed away in his jail cell due to starvation. When Frank heard this news, he came rushing home to find that his family and house were gone. After dealing with his grief, which included insomnia and temporary blindness, he decided that the best path forward was to seek a new chapter of renewal at Taliesin. With a few modifications, he reconstructed the house, naming it Taliesin II, though he would not spend much time here. One of his fans, a wealthy woman by the name of MIRIAM, wrote to him to express her condolences. The two began corresponding and eventually met face to face, and in less than a year, they were dating. Around this time, Frank's reputation began to repair itself, and he was offered a major commission overseas, designing the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo, Japan. He left the States to oversee construction in Japan and acquired a vast Japanese art collection, which he sent back home to Wisconsin, essentially using Taliesin not as his own home, but as storage for his art. All the while, Frank's first wife had never granted him a divorce, which she finally did in 1922, allowing Frank and Noelle to marry each other. Not even 2 years later, Noelle was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and the couple separated. In the divorce proceedings, she took a large portion of his finances with her. The following year, as a lightning storm raged over Taliesin, a fire started from the telephone next to Frank's bed, destroying the living quarters once again. The fire consumed many of the sculptures which he had collected in Japan, leaving them in charred fragments. But seeing the beauty in everything, he used these fragments to rebuild Taliesin III, saying, "I put these fragments aside to weave them into the masonry, the fabric of Taliesin III, that now, already in mind, was to stand in place of Taliesin II, and I went to work." Wright was already in debt following the divorce, but went to work rebuilding his home yet again. Unfortunately, by 1927, his finances were completely tapped out, leading the bank to foreclose on Taliesin III. But it was saved by his former client and longtime fan, Darwin Martin, who raised money to purchase the home from the bank and return it to Frank. The interior was the culmination of 3 separate architectural renditions, all building on each other, with tragedy forcing their refinement, until the interior space measured approximately 37,000 square feet. The vaulted living room ceiling was lined with geometric trim traversing the facets of its faces, above furniture which Frank had designed to be perfectly placed and arranged on the hardwood floors. Every window had been placed with care to allow sunlight to penetrate the space at all hours of the day. Heavy stone walls were accented by linear wood elements, which pointed towards the outdoors, meandering and tangling with each other to create more intimate spaces, such as the dining area, which was decorated with Japanese art and pottery. Nestled in the folds of cold stone, warm light radiated from the corners' geometric lamps extending floor to ceiling. Everywhere you looked, each sightline was so masterfully controlled, manipulating natural light to contrast with shadows disappearing out of sight. The hearth became monolithic, using larger blocks than the straight and narrow ones which composed the walls, granting hierarchy of scale, mirroring natural rock formations found around the property. Traveling throughout the house, you would encounter nooks, framing views of the rolling hills as the ceiling appeared to detach from the walls to continue outside. To further blur the lines of indoor and outdoor living, curtain walls could be found, with retractable glass doors allowing the buffer from indoor to outdoor to be removed completely. Intricate connections could be found throughout, with shelves following the windows' alignments, allowing items to become silhouetted as the sun shone behind them. The library contained floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, which transitioned to half-height bookshelves below windows, as they wrapped around the room with a skylight thoughtfully placed directly above a desk, offering several options for seating, accommodating comfort with any creative or academic activity. The studio, painted in Frank's signature Cherokee red, opened up with natural light, reflecting from the ceiling's carefully planned wood beams. Linear elements extended, stretching from end to end, delineating spaces for separate activities, offering minimal form to conceal their intended functions. Unembellished posts punctured the ceilings to disrupt carefully planned windows to allow for perfect lighting, while built-in seating created more intimate areas along the hearth. Along one wall, a desk stretched from side to side, with built-in shelves extending from the windows. It was in this studio that Frank Lloyd Wright designed some of his most iconic buildings, such as Falling Water, which we featured recently in a video. Frank was able to live out the rest of his life in the house, traveling back and forth to Taliesin West in Arizona. When he passed away in 1959, Taliesin III was willed to the Taliesin Fellowship, which Frank had established to continue the legacy of his home and later host the School of Architecture. By the 1990s, the house had fallen into disrepair, with significant wood rot and structural issues prompting a new nonprofit group to be formed, the Taliesin Preservation Incorporated, to address costly maintenance. By the late 1990s, a lot of restoration work had already been completed before a severe storm caused one of the courtyard's oak trees to come crashing down through the house. Since 1998, the modern-day equivalent of nearly $20 million has been spent restoring the home and making repairs caused by natural disasters. Thankfully, with the commitment of Taliesin's curators, the house has been open to the public for tours and continues to welcome tens of thousands of visitors every year. If you have ever visited, I would love to hear about your experience down below in the comments section. And while you're there, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an exciting episode of This House. I would also like to take a moment to say a special thank you to our This House supporters whose names you can see on screen right now. If you would like to see your name on the screen and contribute in part to the production of these videos, join our membership program today. I'll see you next time on This House.